Hostage situations are a race against time. The captors hold all the cards, their motives often shrouded in a toxic mix of ideology and desperation. For the hostages, every breath becomes a plea for freedom, a silent prayer whispered into the darkness. The world holds its breath, caught in the grip of a drama that transcends borders and ideologies. A successful rescue requires meticulous planning, flawless execution, and a deep understanding of the human element at play. The lives of innocent civilians hang by a thread, their fate resting in the hands of highly trained professionals operating in the shadows. The decision to launch a hostage rescue operation is never taken lightly. The moral obligation to protect innocent lives, to confront evil and injustice, fuels the determination to bring the hostages home safely. The Gaza Strip, a densely populated sliver of land on the Mediterranean coast, has been a crucible of conflict for decades. Caught in the crosshairs of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Gaza has witnessed waves of violence, each leaving behind a legacy of pain, mistrust, and shattered lives. The roots of the conflict run deep, entangled in competing claims to land, resources, and national identity. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a complex and multifaceted issue with a long and bloody history. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and the creation of the State of Israel. The Gaza Strip, initially under Egyptian control, became home to many of these refugees. Subsequent wars in 1967 and 1973 further entrenched the Israeli occupation of Gaza and the West Bank. The rise of Hamas, a Palestinian Islamist organization designated as a terrorist group by Israel, the United States, and other countries, further complicated the situation. The recent escalation in violence, culminating in the hostage crisis and subsequent IDF rescue operation, is but the latest chapter in this long and tragic saga. The seeds of the crisis were sown with a brazen Hamas offensive deep into Israeli territory, catching many off guard with its scale and audacity. This attack, launched on a Jewish holiday, targeted both military and civilian installations, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. The speed and ferocity of the offensive stunned many, shattering any semblance of normalcy and plunging the region back into chaos. In the aftermath of the attack, Israel vowed swift and decisive retaliation, launching a series of airstrikes and artillery bombardments targeting Hamas positions in Gaza. As the fighting intensified, reports began to emerge of hostages being taken by Hamas militants, both Israeli civilians and soldiers. The international community watched with growing concern, urging both sides to show restraint and seek a peaceful resolution to the crisis. With the clock ticking and the lives of hostages hanging in the balance, the IDF sprang into action. Central to any successful hostage rescue operation is the acquisition of actionable intelligence. Satellite imagery, signal intercepts, and human intelligence were painstakingly pieced together, forming a mosaic of information. Analysts worked around the clock, sifting through mountains of data, desperate to uncover the critical piece of information that would lead them to their objective. The pressure was immense, the margin for error razor thin. A single miscalculation, a misinterpretation of intelligence, could have disastrous consequences, jeopardizing the lives of both hostages and rescuers. As the intelligence picture began to crystallize, a clearer understanding of the situation emerged. The hostages were believed to be held in a heavily fortified compound in a densely populated neighborhood, surrounded by a labyrinth of narrow streets and alleyways. With the location of the hostages identified, the IDF brass turned their attention to selecting the units best equipped for this perilous mission. The Sayeret Matkal, Israel's elite special forces unit, renowned for their operational secrecy and surgical precision, would spearhead the operation. Working in close coordination with them would be elements of the Shaldog unit, the Israeli Air Force's commando unit specializing in covert operations and combat search and rescue. The Sayeret Matkal, often compared to the U.S. Army's Delta Force, are masters of stealth and surprise. The Shaldog unit, known for their expertise in aerial insertion and extraction, would provide critical air support, securing the airspace around the target area and standing by to evacuate the hostages once freed. Preparations for the raid were conducted with the utmost secrecy. The operators, handpicked for their skills and experience, spent countless hours studying the intelligence reports, rehearsing every possible scenario, and familiarizing themselves with every nook and cranny of the target area. As the sun began its final descent over the Gaza Strip, the assault force prepared to move. The tension was palpable, the silence broken only by the rustling of gear. The order to execute the mission crackled over their comms. Under the cover of darkness, helicopters lifted off, speeding towards the target area. Inside, the operators, their faces grim, checked their weapons one last time. The helicopters navigated the darkness, swooping low over rooftops. As they approached the target compound, the assault force prepared to disembark. The silence of the night was shattered by a deafening roar. As the Sayeret Matkal operators stormed the compound, their assault a carefully orchestrated symphony of violence. Walls were breached, doors kicked in, and a hail of gunfire erupted as the Israelis caught the Hamas militants off guard. The element of surprise, so carefully cultivated, paid off in those crucial first few minutes. The Hamas militants, taken aback by the suddenness and ferocity of the assault, scrambled to mount a defense, but they were outmatched and outgunned. The Sayeret Matkal operators, highly trained and equipped with superior firepower, moved with precision and purpose, clearing room by room, their every action designed to minimize risk to the hostages. The hostages, some held for days, huddled together, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. The Sayeret Matkal operators, their faces grim but their voices calm and reassuring, moved quickly to secure the hostages, ushering them out of the compound and into the waiting arms of their comrades. News of the daring raid spread like wildfire, dominating headlines and sparking a flurry of international reactions. The United States, Israel's staunchest ally, expressed unwavering support for the operation, commending the IDF for their courage and skill in rescuing the hostages. Other Western nations echoed these sentiments, condemning Hamas for its actions and reaffirming their commitment to Israel's security. However, the raid also drew sharp criticism from some quarters, particularly in the Arab world and among human rights groups. Critics condemned the operation as a disproportionate use of force, pointing to the civilian casualties that inevitably accompany any military action in a densely populated area like Gaza. The Palestinian Authority, while welcoming the release of the hostages, condemned the raid as a violation of Palestinian sovereignty and called for an independent investigation into the civilian casualties. The international community found itself deeply divided, reflecting the complex and sensitive nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The success of the hostage rescue operation came at a heavy price. Despite the meticulous planning and surgical precision of the raid, civilian casualties were unavoidable. The densely populated nature of the Gaza Strip, the use of human shields by Hamas, and the fog of war all contributed to the tragic loss of innocent lives. The images of Palestinian civilians, including women and children, killed or injured in the crossfire, sparked outrage and condemnation. Human rights groups accused Israel of using excessive force and failing to take adequate precautions to protect civilians. The Israeli government, while expressing regret for the loss of innocent lives, maintained that it had done everything possible to minimize civilian casualties, blaming Hamas for using civilians as human shields. Beyond the immediate casualties, the raid left behind a trail of psychological scars. The daring hostage rescue operation sent shockwaves through the region. Its reverberations felt far beyond the battle-scarred streets of Gaza. The raid, while hailed as a tactical victory for Israel, did little to address the underlying issues fueling the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. If anything, it underscored the deep-seated mistrust and animosity that have plagued the region for decades. In the aftermath of the raid, the already fragile peace process lay in tatters. The Palestinian Authority, angered by the incursion into Gaza and the civilian casualties, suspended all contact with Israel, accusing it of acting in bad faith. Hamas, despite suffering a significant setback, emerged from the conflict more determined than ever to resist Israeli occupation. The raid also had broader implications for regional stability. The international community, deeply divided over the raid, seemed powerless to break the cycle of violence. Despite the complexities and controversies surrounding the recent IDF hostage rescue operation in Gaza, The mission stands as a testament to the enduring importance of hostage rescue as a moral imperative and a strategic necessity. The courage and skill displayed by the IDF operators serve as a reminder that even in the darkest of circumstances, hope remains. The successful extraction reaffirms the fundamental human right to freedom and security. It underscores the responsibility of nations to stand up for their citizens and confront those who seek to terrorize and divide.